Fantastic. Okay, so I'm a little bit late because I had to bail someone out of jail yesterday thanks to victimless crimes, and the state put them in, and I didn't get here until 2 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully you'll forgive me for that. But this is about getting your libertarian messaging right. Who in here in this room is brand new to the Libertarian Party 1 year or less? Okay, thank you. Welcome. Now, you'll notice that most of the people in the room are not, and they're coming to a presentation on getting the libertarian messaging right.
Noted.
Libertarian messaging has suffered for a little while, and that's one of the reasons why libertarianism, although it is making gains in people's minds, and people are not are self-identifying on your Nolan chart as a libertarian, they don't want to identify as a libertarian publicly. And that's a lot has to do with the image of the Libertarian Party and libertarianism in general. And so what I want to do is I want to go through two sections. I'm going to go through before you get started. These are general marketing and branding messaging principles that everyone needs to follow if you're going to advance your cause, your affiliate, your group, and your ideology. And secondly, I'm going to go through what we've found. I've been involved in kind of the liberty movement, so to speak, for about 6.5 years. And what we've found over time in trying to engage people, trying to message to mom and pop. I remember, has anyone ever here been to PorcFest? Okay, a couple of you. Okay. It's a great camping adventure in New Hampshire. You really should go. There's a bunch of libertarians. There's basically no authorities involved, and everyone has a very good time. And stays fairly safe. But at PorcFest, they were talking about some libertarian drama that I've heard has been going on recently. And they were asking me what I knew about it, and I said I really don't know anything because I don't recruit a lot of libertarians. I recruit a lot of non-political, non-active people to get involved. And that is, I think, where a lot of our focus should be. So, a little bit of my background. Is anyone here familiar with People Against the NDAA or PANDA? Couple of you? Okay. So PANDA was my first organization, grew to one of the largest civil liberties organizations in the nation. We had about 30,000 people active with us at one point. We passed legislation that basically said you can't indefinitely detain an American citizen without charge or trial in this city or in this county. We did that all the way from the capital of New York to Idaho to Massachusetts. And that was a result of the law signed into law by President Obama in December 31st, 2011. That basically said, if the president says he can detain you, he can. You don't get a trial, you don't get due process, you're straight to Gitmo, whether you're an American citizen or not. And that's the National Defense Authorization Act. So that was where I started. But then I realized that there needed to be broader assistance given to people. And so I launched the Solutions Institute, which is an activist training center. And we trained over 70 organizations. Is anyone in here familiar with Holman Square in Chicago? Okay, we didn't do our job that well. Holman Square, we organized the massive protest outside Holman Square, which is a police detention center that people were disappearing in Chicago. They were having their rights violated, they were off the books detention, they were being tortured with heroin needles. It was a pretty bad situation in Chicago. We organized a massive protest, got international media attention all the way from the, South China Morning Post and from The Guardian. We did several other things as well, including defeating an anti-property rights bill in Alaska, which would have basically said if you, this is a little community in Alaska, like a little fishing community, about 3,500 people live there. And the bill would have, or the new zoning code would have said that if you had backyard chickens, that was illegal. You couldn't have fishing equipment in your yard, that was illegal. Your fence had to be like 3 feet high on a corner and like 4 feet high on a road. And on and on and on, and the fines were $1,000 per day. And if you didn't pay your fines for 30 days, they took your property. So we were able to defeat that. We got about 300 or so citizens to get involved, about a tenth of the island. And now I run We Do Better, which is very simple, but it stands for We the People Do Better Than Government. And it's very similar to the solutions cards that you guys have in front of you. That's some of the type of work we do. So let's start getting into your messaging. Number one of the most important principles of messaging, pick your audience. How many times have you heard, we gotta wake everyone up? Yeah, everyone's not going to get woken up. It's not going to happen. There's a reason why only 3% of people participated in the American Revolution. That's really all it takes. It's somewhere around 3 to 3.5%. So you need to figure out, who am I messaging to? Not just who am I messaging to, but also who am I not messaging to? So if you're going to go, you need the radicals and you need the moderates. But if you're going to go out and be radical, understand that you have a certain audience to be radical to. If you're going to go out and be a moderate, understand that you have a certain audience. I want you to think about, whether you run an affiliate or whether you're involved in a group, I want you to think about, who is your audience? Who are you trying to bring over to libertarianism and to liberty? And importantly, who are you not? One of the best ways to do this is to create a profile of the person in your head, of the perfect person that you might market to. So they might be 25. They might have $30,000 in college debt. They might live in an apartment because they can't afford a house. They might wear glasses. They might not have the money for expensive clothes, so they shop at Goodwill. Create a profile of the person you want to market to in your head so that your marketing is consistent and you're constantly reaching out to that group of people. Number 2, identify your competition. Especially political philosophies have a lot of different people messaging. And competition isn't bad. Competition makes us better. We know this as libertarians. But identifying your competition means, who's out there? Who is already trying to get this message across? Who I can work with? Or who I don't believe they're doing quite a good enough job, so I want to make a tweak on that. For some of you, that may be the pragmatic caucus. For some of you, that may be the skeptical libertarian. For some of you, that may be a conservative website or a liberal website that you're following, and you say, okay, this is my competition. Write down who they are. Write down at least one thing they're doing well, and at least one thing they're not doing as well that you particularly would like to improve on. Number 3, lay out your vision. This is so important. Has anyone ever heard of a thing called infighting? I'm sorry. I ran now 3 national nonprofit organizations. We, and I can confidently say, never had any infighting. I've had in the neighborhood of hundreds of chapters and teams around the country. And there are 2 keys to not having infighting. One is lay out your vision and your expectations for the people before they come in the door. One of the biggest reasons that libertarians have issues with infighting, okay, so who was involved in the Ron Paul campaign? A couple of you? Okay, thanks for sticking around. We're sorry. It's been a long time in politics. But the Ron Paul campaign, he ran as a kind of conservative Republican, but with a very libertarian message. And you could kind of envision the type of world that you'd be living in and the type of man be representing you in the White House if you were going for Ron Paul. You could think, okay, well, there are going to be a lot of gun owners around, there are going to be economic freedom, we're going to end the Fed, you could get a good idea of the type of culture you'd be around. It was almost a conservative culture, but with libertarian values. And so if you were on the left and you were voting for Ron Paul, you were voting for him for one big reason. What was that?
He was adorable.
War. He was also adorable.
So winner.
But you were voting for Ron Paul primarily because he was anti-war. So you were willing to accept the culture that came with it because you knew he would oppose the war, and that was your big issue. Well, in the Libertarian Party, you have 2 competing visions of the world. You have a vision of the world that's very libertarian in philosophy, but very, very conservative culturally. That's very, there's rules and norms, and you wear suits and ties, and you do things like that. And then you have a culture that's very libertine. That's very about, oh, well, everyone should be able to do pretty much whatever they want. And there should be not only no legal consequences, but also very little, if any, social consequences. One you could say is probably a more left-leaning view of the world, or a libertine view. One you could say is probably a more right-leaning view of the world. But these 2 views continually clash inside the party. And so what you need to think about so you avoid this type of infighting is in order to get what they want. They say, okay, here's our principles, but we're willing to come here, and we have more people than you, so we're going to move the needle 0.5 point this way. And the party also has a motto, the party of principle, which means no compromise. Which means we're not compromising on anything. And I'm sure you've seen that. But now you have dual expectations for people who are brought into the party. On one hand, they might think it's the party of principle, so it won't go against anything I believe. On the other hand, it's a political party that requires compromise. You have to have your expectations set straight before someone walks in the door. Also, setting boundaries. There's a certain name that rhymes with Rarvin that many of you know is out there. Everyone has kind of their own personal views, personal beliefs on the situation. But here's one thing that stands fast in every bit of marketing, everywhere. You are defined as much by who you are as who you are not. And so setting boundaries as an organization not only is one of the greatest ways to increase membership and get people to see you stand for something, but setting boundaries keeps 1, 2, 5, 10, 25 individuals from making life hell for the rest of the people in the organization. So set boundaries. Figure out who you are and who you are not, what your values are and what your values are not. Next, understand the trends. There's a book by Russell Dalton called The Good Citizen. Has anyone ever read it? Okay, you need to pick up this book. He's not a libertarian. He's a professor. And he's not giving you his opinion. He's looking at a series of surveys here in the United States and around the world that ask people, how do you define citizenship? What makes a good citizen to you? Now originally, about in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s when they're taking this survey, there was a theory called duty-based citizenship. This is what most people consider to be the most important things that define you as a citizen. Obey the law, never evade taxes, vote in elections, serve in the military. That's your duty-based citizen. That is your older generation. That is your average Trump voter. These are your duty-based citizens. But the new generation coming up prioritizes other things as the definition of citizenship a little bit more. This is called an engaged citizen. Keep watch on government. Understand others. Active in association or be involved in a group. Choose products. Vote with your dollar. Help worse off in the United States and help worse off in the world. And the trend is slowly shifting from duty-based to engaged citizen.
Can you repeat the name of the book and the author, please?
Yes, that is The Good Citizen by Russell Dalton. D-A-L-T-O-N. So I want you to understand trends, understand how they develop, and understand where they are. That is the best book I know of right now to give you for that. And also have a plan for victory. There was one phrase that is jokingly bandied about by both supporters and opposites of Donald Trump alike. And it is, when I'm done, you're going to come to me, Mr. Trump, and you're going to say, Mr. Trump, we're tired of winning. We've won so much. There's too much winning.
Quote unquote Donald Trump.
It is a fact of life that people want to win. They want to win in everything from being first in line at the roller coaster to an election. And so when you are messaging and when you are talking to people, show them how you're proceeding toward victory. That is the number one thing that will get people involved with you and off their couch. Show them how you're proceeding toward victory. Take a picture of yourself at an event. Show them the number of signups you just got. Show them the number of people who are getting involved. Talk to them about someone's mind you just changed. There was a 12-year-old girl, I was speaking in Ohio about a month ago, a 12-year-old girl, and we talked about We Do Better, which I'll get into in a minute, she told me afterward that this is the first, she's been to a lot of political functions, her parents have dragged her around, she said this is the first thing I've ever heard that I could really believe in. That's the type of thing that you share to your people. And now I want to go to We Do Better messaging. So We Do Better is based on a simple concept. There are many ways of addressing human needs in America. There are government, nonprofits, for-profits, informal groups, etc. The vast majority of human needs in this country are addressed by nonprofits, for-profits, informal groups, i.e. we the people, and the vast majority of our resources are going to the government. A little bit of a conundrum there that we'd like to solve. And we do two things. Number one, We Do Better as an organization, our 501c3 arm, produce those solutions cards you see in front of you. Those solutions cards lay out organizations that are either demonstrably doing better than government in a particular area, or they are focusing on an area the government does not. And it's backed up with data and statistics that we can give you on any organization if you ask. And We Do Better Action is advocating for something called the Arizona Charitable Credit. Is anyone here familiar with that? Okay, you should be, because this is a gem in Arizona. For the past 20 years, taxpayers in Arizona have been able to direct 200 of their tax dollars to any nonprofit organization that serves the poor instead of the state government. In 2016, they directed $52 million to organizations outside the state government. Remember, each individual taxpayer has this choice. And at the end of 2016, Democrats and Republicans together voted to double the credit from $200 to $400 per person, even though all the politicians hate it. We are looking at advancing that around the country. We got it introduced in California not too long ago. We Do Better Action, our 501c4 arm, is focused on that. We want to not only educate people and show them that people do a better job so that we meet human needs better, we also want to give them the power and the resources to take their existing tax money and do it with that. And Robin Kerner did a fantastic job helping us with the messaging. If you guys get a chance, he's one of the main tables in here. Robin Kerner is one of the best people in messaging in libertarianism. Like, he just, get invited to speak, all that stuff. He's great. So, but we talked about a few principles for We Do Better messaging that I think can apply to your lives as well, and your groups as well. Number one, speak to non-libertarians. People who identify themselves as politically libertarian are kind of already get it. They're kind of already there. And libertarianism has the most realistic, rational philosophy if you take hold of it and understand that. How many of you know of an alternative to any government service? Any alternative to any government service? Okay. They're not alternatives. When you say alternative, you hand the government a victory they don't deserve, which is that they're the main. That's absurd. For example, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. This is straight welfare, basic cash assistance in the United States. That program, out of every $10, $2.46 ends up in the hands of the welfare recipient. $2.46. That's 74% overhead. Aubrey, you're from Texas, right?
Yes.
6%. So basically 60 cents out of every $10, 6 cents out of every dollar. And there's an organization called Crossroads of Michigan, which is featured on our poverty card, which is for every $10 you give them, they also run a basic cash assistance program, but for every $10 you give them, $9 of that goes to the recipients who need them. And instead of cutting them off the minute they get a job, they help those people individually through that process. If the government is the main provider of human needs, then we've all completely lost our way. That public schools, who says that only the government can serve the public? Public services, who says only the government can serve the public?
Government.
I mean, this is absurd. You're giving them a position they don't have. So I want you to understand and be confident in the fact that we the people do a better job than government, and we do more than government. And therefore, libertarianism and liberty is the most rational political philosophy in America today. Speak to people where they are, not where you want them to be. Most people will not spend 10 hours reading Rothbard. They don't know who Mises is, and they don't care. What they care about is that their mom, who was once eligible for government health care, is not, because now she makes just above the minimum threshold, but she can't afford health insurance on top of that. That's what they care about. They care, if you're a local candidate, run on local issues. Run on the zoning laws that are preventing this business from coming in and creating jobs. Run on, let's stop banning people from feeding the homeless. Run on, maybe giving shotguns to the homeless probably isn't the best idea to run on. But, I don't know. But, run on solving people's problems. Let me give you a truth you may not have heard before, but I know you understand. People care way more about their problems being solved than they care about freedom. If you take away their freedom and you still solve their problems, they're all for it. And you need to understand that if you want to be effective. Next, about the bad and the good, speak empirically. Now I'm going to pitch We Do Better a little bit here. On wedobetter.org, Robin and I sat down for like 3 days straight. And I don't have a picture of the whiteboard because I got here like 5 minutes late. But we have a whiteboard where we were like drawing, we were doing totally libertarian thing. We were drawing circles and arrows and we were putting words here and they're connected to each other and it's all government's fault. What we scratched out became the 8 fundamental flaws when you ask government to provide public services. Because government is the only institution where resources do not automatically follow results, these flaws exist. Only institution, you say. If you ask your lawn boy to do your lawn and he doesn't do a good job, can you refuse to pay him next time? Refuse to accept his services again, right? Right? What about a nonprofit? If you donate to a nonprofit and they don't do a good job with your money, can you choose to donate somewhere else?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about a massive corporation like FedEx? Can you choose not to ship packages with them and that automatically impacts their bottom line?
UPS.
It may not affect them 100% because you're just one person, but you by yourself can impact the bottom line and ensure that resources are going toward results. Government is the only institution where that is not the case. And because that is the case, they have fundamental flaws, and they're listed on our website. I don't have time to go through all of them. wedobetter.org. I want people to stop asking, should government do something? I want people to start asking, what happens when you ask government to do something? And what happens is these fundamental flaws. One of them is increase in waste. What puts downward pressure on waste? Anyone? Downward pressure.
Competition.
Profit margin, competition, more layman's terms.
Accountability, transparency.
Accountability, transparency. I might say that the reason you don't buy the $100 steak dinner is because you might have to spend that $100 on advertising. And if you don't spend the $100 on advertising, you might not get more customers. That is what creates downward pressure on waste. You actually have to earn your dollars. And the money, you have to actually go out and get this money instead of having a guaranteed paycheck come in every single year. Who thinks Congress is going to restrict the budget of all the federal agencies? No? Okay. So they're not going to get their budget restricted. They have basically a guaranteed paycheck. Another good example toward the end, and one of the biggest ones, is it makes us less likely to act on our compassion. Two reasons. Number one, my taxes pay for that. Why would you help a homeless person on the street? Your taxes pay for that. Why would you, feed the poor at a food bank? Your taxes pay for that. And number two, if I walk up and take something from you, let's say I can't walk out of the camera too much. I'll just air take something from you. So I walk up, I take something from you without violating the NAP because I'm not actually taking it. So I take something from you, and then I say, but I'm going to use it for a good purpose. I take your glasses, right? I'm going to give it to someone who needs those glasses.
More than you do.
You're going to want to give me another pair of glasses, right?
Sure.
No, obviously. Very good man up front, by the way. He has multiple pairs of glasses in storage. He's happy to give you. But you resist when someone forces you to do something. And the brilliance of the public welfare system, of the government welfare system, is this idea that you take the people who have the least and you pit them against the people who have the most, and vice versa. And that's how you get your red tape, that's how you get your regulations, and that is one of the fundamental flaws of government. When you are referring to what government does and does not do, or a problem with government, if you tie it back to a fundamental flaw, you change the argument from government does this because the administrator is wrong, or the bureaucrat is wrong, or this agency is just abusive, to government is simply a bad method for meeting human needs. And that is what you want to do. Also empirically on the other side, what I've heard all the time from libertarians is, oh well, if Rothbard were president alive, had controlled civil society, then we would build the roads ourselves, and we would provide healthcare people, and we would, if one day this magical free market emerged from the shackles of government regulation, we would do all of these things. We are not called, we can do better. We are called, we do better. Because right now, today, there are organizations, there are institutions, there are people out there that are doing a demonstrably better job than government, and all we have to do is go out and find them. Well, we've taken some time to find them. Not only do you have some on your solutions cards, which are printable on our website, by the way, but if you go to wedobetter.org and you scroll, it's under We Do Better, Those Who Do Better, or if you search We Do Better, Those Who Do Better, there's a list of over 30 organizations that do better than government in various areas, including, for example, the Detroit Threat Management Center. Anybody here familiar with them? Okay. One of the things you hear all the time is government has these flaws and stuff like that, but they've got to do police because nobody can do it better. Well, the Detroit Threat Management Center is a private security company that works in the toughest neighborhoods in Detroit. Not only do they reduce crime by approximately 90% in the neighborhoods that they are in, but they've only fatally shot one person in their 20-year history versus the Detroit Police Department's 28 per year. They also cost $10 per person per month and only $10 per incident. So they're affordable private security that anyone can use and anyone can have in their community, and they have proven results. And next, lead with the good. You guys have done a fantastic job convincing everybody the government sucks. You really have. Like, congratulations, you can give yourself a round of applause for that. You've done a very, very, very good job exposing that. But what they need to hear is how these organizations do better. Imagine the difference between these two arguments. Argument number one. The Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act suck. They're taking health care from people, and single payer is just going to be the government controlling your life and controlling your health care. And argument number two. Christian Healthcare Ministries, which is a nonprofit organization that operates a healthcare co-op. Basically, you pay in when you don't need it and you take out when you do. Has 279,000 members, has covered over $1 billion in medical bills since 1981, and their plans cost half the price of Obamacare. Obamacare, on the other hand, is taking away people's health freedom. It is ruining people's lives. It is raising people's premiums. We already have this existing solution. How about we support that solution instead? Do you see the difference between those two arguments? You lead with the good, you follow with the bad. Always affirm, especially if you're speaking to progressives, which we need more of in the libertarian movement. Affirm the moral position that you take before you talk about the bad. When it comes to having a plan for success, have practical steps toward this plan. Don't just talk to people about how you're making a difference. Have practical and measurable outcomes. Well, a measurable outcome for us, for example, is if we were to get the Universal Charitable Credit, which is the Arizona Charitable Credit that we've modified for other states, cities, counties, if we were to get that in every state in America, it would direct $4 billion to organizations that do better than the government, instead of the government. When someone comes on board, and we've started 7 teams in the past 3 weeks, when someone comes on board and they say, I want to get involved, we point out to them that they'll at least, if they get a county level UCC or they get a city level UCC, they're going to be directing at least $2 to $4 to $8 million in the first year. These are measurable goals and measurable, achievable goals for people. You need to set those when you're talking about messaging. And lastly, before I take questions, I want to talk about the Donald Trump effect. I want to talk about Trump, period. Most people have, and you can take my opinion along with everyone else's, but most people have misinterpreted why Trump won the election. You've seen this everywhere. He's won the election because the KKK are, in all of our political offices, and that's why Trump won. He's won the election because he really, really hates Mexicans, and he's very clear about that. You hear a lot of these things, but let's look at the mood of the country prior to 2016. In 2012, the mood of the country was shifting toward a Ron Paul type. The mood of the Democratic Party was shifting a little bit toward a Sanders type. And you look at when Trump came on the scene, Trump won basically because Americans they were sick of politicians in D.C. Absolutely sick of them. Sick of politicians, sick of bureaucrats, sick of the swamp, so to speak. And there were 2 ways to address that. There was the Peace branch, which Bernie Sanders was saying he had, and there was the middle finger, which Donald Trump. The reason Americans voted for Donald Trump is because there was no Bernie Sanders, for starters, but is because it was that or vote for everything you hate.
Yeah.
Okay? And some people were able to hold their tongue and do that. I'm sure a lot of people who voted for Clinton held their tongue not because they wanted to, but because, oh, well, the other guy's just that bad. But that is why people voted for him. So when you see people coming out and going, oh, well, I'm going to insult people because that's how Donald Trump won the election. Well, I've never heard anywhere in psychology or in anywhere around people where insulting someone got them to listen to you. I've really never heard that. The other thing is the idea that a bunch of racists just went out and voted for him. They probably did. But when you dehumanize a person down to an ideology or down to a belief, that person will never listen to you because they'll hear the contempt in your voice. So if you say, oh, well, all of these libtards are just ruining this country. If you say the Rethuglicans are out there and they're ruining America. The minute you dehumanize someone, dehumanizing someone is the first step toward war. It's the first step toward genocide. You've got to make someone believe that the other person is less than human. And you'll never reach a person who you personally believe is less than human. So if you think that people who voted for Donald Trump are defined by their vote for Donald Trump, go talk to some Trump supporters. Sit down, have a conversation with them about issues, not about the guy. If you think that people who vote for Bernie Sanders are socialists who adore Stalin and want him to have a national monument in DC, some of them probably are. But if you believe that, sit down with one of them and talk to them. You know, one of the biggest democratic socialist pages, which is Millennials for Revolution. Does anyone follow that, by the way, Millennials for Revolution? Highly recommend doing so if you want to understand the voice and the ideas of the progressive left right now. But Millennials for Revolution posted a video back during Hurricane Harvey that was about the Cajun Navy going down and helping people in Texas. By the way, if you look on our website, you would know the Coast Guard with $7.6 billion rescued 4,500 people in Hurricane Harvey, which is fantastic, and congratulations and good to the rescue teams. But the Cajun Navy, asking for gas money, rescued 6,000. Yes, it's fantastic work. So at the end of the day, when we're talking about the socialist ideas, so the video. So they posted a video of the Cajun Navy going down. And what did they call it? Peak socialism. Oh. Now, we can argue over the terms, and I can back and forth around how your beliefs are terrible, or I can recognize that you think socialism means helping people, and so I simply show you a better way of helping people and I bring you around. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll have the flyers from my next speech was end capping the convention. I know you guys will be ridiculously tired, but I promise you it'll be ridiculously interesting and it will help you with your affiliate and your activism and what you're doing. It'll show you how to get involved with the We Do Better movement. There's also sign-up sheets if you want to get emails for us or get involved in doing maybe a charitable credit in your state. Other than that, I'm open for questions and thank you guys very much.